In this video, I'm going to teach you how to build a habit tracker in Notion at 5 levels of complexity. We'll start from the absolute basics with a to-do list style habit tracker, eventually work our way into databases, and finally at level 5, end up with an extremely advanced habit tracker with a day score property and a streak counter that counts both your current streak for each habit and the longest streak. I'm going to show you each and every step that goes into building at each of these levels. Every single level is going to be a fully functioning habit tracker, so you can go through as much of the video as you want. And later in the video, I'm also going to show you how to integrate this habit tracker into more complex systems like Ultimate Brain, which is my template for full personal productivity. So without any further ado, let's just get into building with level 1, which, as I said, is an extremely simple to-do list style habit tracker. And I'm including this in the video because my friend Matt Diavella actually showed me his checklist style habit tracking one time. And it was literally this. He had a checklist in a different app. I believe it was Apple Notes, but basically he would check off everything he needed to do during the day. And when he woke up the next day, he would uncheck all of those habits and check them off again. So just for thoroughness, I'm going to show you how to build this. Basically, if you want to create a to-do list in Notion, you can use the back and forward bracket just like that. You get a to-do, drink water, and bam, you have yourself a habit tracker. I'll go ahead and add a few more habits right now. And that, my friends, is level 1. Now here at level 2 is where I think things get actually interesting, because here I actually have records of the habits that I've done for each day. And I have a button up here called New Day, which if I click, I get a brand new record for today, and I can check these off without having to worry about unchecking them again. So here is exactly how to build this very simple still habit tracker. So I'm going to clear everything off here, make myself a brand new page. And first and foremost, I'm going to type /but to get a button here, and I'm going to call this button New Day. So this is basically a template button, and whenever we click it, something is going to happen based on the action we choose here. So what I want to do is insert blocks into the current page, and this basically gives me like a mini version of the Notion page I'm on right here, where I can add as many blocks as I want. So to finish this button up, all we need to do is basically recreate what we saw earlier, and to start that, I'm going to do a /1 here to create a heading 1, and then I'm going to type the @ symbol, and I'm going to search for today. And you can see here that we get these two options: today, March 5th, 2024, which is not that useful because it would always be that date, or today, date when duplicated. That is what I want it to be, and it's always going to be the specific day when you click the button. Below that, I'll do a triple dash to create a nice little horizontal rule here, and then I'll do /2c for 2 columns. From there, I can construct my to-do list just like I did before, and I think it's on my clipboard. I'm gonna go ahead and drag a couple of them over to this column here, add one more habit just so I have a nice even amount. And now everything in here is going to be basically duplicated onto the page whenever I click that new button, which I should actually name New Day. And if we want to get fancy, we could also give it a nice little icon or emoji. So I think I'm just going to give it a sun emoji. That looks pretty good. Hit done there. And now when I hit New Day, there is my habit tracker for the day. I can check these off, and that is my habit tracker at level 2. Here at level 3, things are starting to get a little bit fancier, because now instead of a to-do list style habit tracker, we've got ourselves a database, and that means flexibility. We have a gallery view here. We can see all of our days as cards. We can check things off just like we could earlier, but we also have a table view, and we can use this view if we want it. We can check things off just like that. So databases are for flexibility, and as you'll see later on at levels 4 and 5, they also give us the ability to track stats a little bit better as well. So let's build this from scratch by first and foremost deleting this sample database and creating our own. Just like I would normally do, I'm going to type /database as a block. I'm going to choose inline, and we'll call this habits. And I think that is totally fine. I'm going to go ahead and hide this database title, and we are eventually going to end up with a gallery style database like I showed before, but it's actually easier to create our properties in a table layout, so that's why I'm starting with this first. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this tags property. I don't really need that, and just so we have some space to work with, I'm going to go ahead and make this full width for now, and we'll start creating our actual habit properties. So to keep things simple, we are going to use checkbox properties for each habit, and I'm going to use an icon to represent each one along with giving each one a name. So this one I'm going to say just drink water, find myself a little water icon. That one looks pretty good. And one cool thing you can do with table views now is you can actually basically scrunch this down to only show the icon. And that is why using a representative icon is so useful here. But also if I hover over it, I get this nice little tooltip that shows me the name of the property as well. So basically to finish out our habit tracker, all I need to do here is duplicate this property and then rename each duplicate and give it a new icon to represent the habit. So for this one, I'll say go for a run. find a nice little running icon, and then I'll do that for the rest of my habits as well. So at this point, we now have this little matrix of checkboxes, and as I go about my day, I can easily check off the habits as I'm doing them. I'm gonna go ahead and type @today to basically represent that this entry right here is for today. And to make this a little bit better, there are a few additional things we can add to this database before we move on to level 4 and actually add in some stat tracking. The first thing we want to add in here is a date property. So I'm going to find date right there, and I'm just going to call it date. And what this is going to allow us to do is actually sort our habit tracker by the date of each day. So I'm going to set that as, say, March 5th, this as the 4th, this as the 3rd. And then I probably want to see the current day at the top like this. So I'm going to go ahead and add a sort right here. I'm going to choose date, and I'm going to set this to descending order. Now, in the case of this database, we don't really need any filter criteria. Pretty much every row in the database is one we're going to want to see in all the views. If you wanted filters, you could add them. But one thing we do want to add here is a database template, and we want to make that a recurring template. That way, we have a new journal entry that gets added every single day, whether or not we remember to do it. And that way, if we're not tracking our habits, we're not doing our habits, we're going to have a record that we weren't staying on the ball. So to do that, I'm going to go over to this little blue arrow on the new button. I'm going to click new template, and I'm basically going to create a habit template. But instead of giving it a normal title just in plain text, I'm going to once again type @today. And now you can see date when duplicated is an option here. So I'm going to choose that. And if you wanted to, you could do like habit journal or something like that, but I'm just going to leave it as today. And then this actually affords us an opportunity to go beyond this simple checkbox style tracking. If you wanted to, you could also say, come down here and add some journaling prompts. If you're the kind of person who wants to note things you're grateful for, or you want to observe improvements you could make in your life, in your processes, in your habits, you want to track your workouts, all that kind of stuff could easily be put on these pages, which then double as a journal and a habit tracker. But for now, I'm just going to leave these here as templates. I'm going to click out of here, and I'm going to go back into this new arrow. And then on the today template we just created, I'm going to set this as the default for all the views in this database. And then I'm going to come back here and also set it to repeat every single day. By default, it's going to create the page at midnight. I think that is totally fine. And once I have saved this, this is now a recurring template. You can see this little icon right here. And that means we're going to get a brand new habit journal entry every single day, so we don't have to remember to create it ourselves. And to finish up level 3, we are going to also add that gallery view we saw earlier. So just to make things a little bit more fleshed out, I'm going to add yesterday there to that second entry. I'll go ahead and delete this third one. Check a few habits off just like that. And then I'm going to click plus here. Name this gallery, choose the gallery view like that. And by default, we're not going to see anything listed here. And that is because the card preview is set to page content. What we actually want to set it to is none. And then we're going to go over, after we hit done here, to properties. And we're going to add all of our habit properties. So I'll skip date, but I'll add all of these checkbox properties. And that gets us our nice little habit tracker in gallery form. I might want to reorder these. So they're basically in order of how I would do them in the day. There we go. We have a gallery style habit tracker. If we want to, we can hide this database title, and that, my friends, is level 3. Now here at level 4, things are getting even fancier because in addition to having a database style habit tracker, we now have a little bit of actual stat tracking. Here in this day score column, you can actually see, based on the number of the checkboxes we've checked, we can see how we did for the day. So to create this, we're going to start from the endpoint of level 3 and basically start building onto it for the rest of this video. And if I click into this day score property, you can see that this is basically built off of a Notion formula. So for the rest of this video, we're basically going to be diving into a little bit of Notion formula magic. You're probably going to learn a thing or two about a few of the different functions in here, how to use some cool little math tricks to get some really cool stats here. So buckle in for that. And to start things off, once again, I'm going to delete this example and I'm going to paste in the database that we had at the end of step 3 earlier in the video. So we already have all of our checkboxes. Essentially what we need to do is basically tally up the value of each of these checkboxes and then get the average, express that as a percentage, and then turn that into a nice little progress bar. So I'm gonna go ahead and hide the date property here. It's not super useful in this view. I'm also going to make sure that this is a full width page so we have a bit more space to work with. Maybe drag this over here a bit, and I'm going to create a brand new formula style property, which I'm gonna call day score. And like I said earlier, this day score is basically just going to be the percentage of the checkboxes that we checked off each and every day. So actually, instead of a calendar, how about we do a chart? That looks pretty good. Okay, so to start things off, I'm going to add a few lines down here just to make the page a bit longer. So essentially what we want to do here is take each of these checkbox values, which are currently Boolean values, either true or false, convert them to number scores, 1 for true, 0 for false, and then divide them by the number of properties, which is in this case 6, to get our average, which we can then turn into a percentage and get a nice little progress bar. So to start that out, we need to find out how to basically turn these checkboxes into numbers. And wouldn't you know it, Notion Formulas has a great function for that. So if I bring this drink protein shake property into the formula editor, I have a checkbox right now. If I were to uncheck it, it would uncheck. But if I pass it to the toNumber function, it's going to represent that checked box as a 1. And as you can see, if I uncheck it, it turns into a 0. So essentially, I want to do that for all of my habit properties here and add up their number values. So to do that, I can just use the plus operator to start adding. I'll do Shift Enter to add each of these lines on their own line. So now we'll do close watch rings, toNumber, plus drink water, toNumber, and so on. So now I have all 6 of my habits here in this formula, and you might be able to tell that this is one small inconvenience with doing any kind of stat tracking for habits in Notion. If you add more habit properties, you do have to come into your formula here and edit the formula a little bit to add those new properties and also change your denominator once you do the average calculation. I'll show you that in just a second, but first let's back out of our formula editor here and start unchecking some boxes just to show what actually happens here. So if everything is unchecked, I've got 0. If everything is checked, I will have 6. Let's go ahead and uncheck one of them just so we can actually see what the average calculation will do. And to create that average calculation, going back to your elementary school math days, remember that to get the average, you basically add up all of the elements and divide by the number of elements. So to do that, we can wrap everything here in parentheses. So if I go to the beginning of this line, I should be able to create a opening parenthesis. I'm going to go ahead and Shift Enter and tab all these in just so they're a bit more readable. And now I can divide by 6. Boom. There is our average. But this looks a little bit ugly because of the repeating 3 here. So to round this to just 2 decimal places, which is going to then translate to 83% in just a second, we can actually use the round function. So I'm going to go round just like that. I'm going to add one more parenthesis I think I might need. And then a cool trick for basically rounding to specific number of decimal places is you can multiply inside the round function by 100 for 2 decimal places, 1,000 for 3 decimal places, and so on, and then divide the entire thing by the same number. So times 100 and then divided by 100, and that gets us 0.83. So if I hit done here, I can now come into the property settings, and because my formula is now outputting a number, it is essentially treated as a number type property for the purposes of formatting, which means I now get this number format choice, and I'm gonna go ahead and choose %. Now we have 83%. We also get the show as options. So I'm gonna go from number to bar, and there, my friends, is our day score. Now to finish up level 4, we are also going to want to show this day score on our gallery view. So if we come over to gallery, we can go to the property settings right here, find that day score property right there. And then I think I actually want it at the top above all of my habits. Boom. Now I've got my nice little bar chart and my habits in this gallery view. All right, you have made it to level 5. This is easily the most advanced level in the video, and it's going to add probably the coolest feature in the video as well, which is this cool little stats area that actually shows us our current and longest streak for each and every one of these habits. This is going to be, I'll just tease it up front, a bit of a longer formula. So before I go through this formula, I'm going to show you something else you can do with an advanced habit tracker like this, where you have a gallery of your journal entries and a stats area. I'm going to show you how you can actually integrate this into a bigger template like Ultimate Brain, my template for complete personal productivity inside of Notion. I'm going to do this part up front because, as you can see, this formula is pretty lengthy, and going through it and explaining it thoroughly is probably going to take a little bit. So I want to show you how to do this part up front, and it's actually not that difficult. So we're going to go over to my template demos workspace here, where I have a complete demo version of Ultimate Brain. I can also link to this in the description if you want to check out Ultimate Brain in case you want to buy it. There's also a discount code in the description as well. And I'm going to go over to this Ultimate Brain Lite view that we've recently created in our Ultimate Brain 2.0 launch. This basically gives you a complete view of everything going on in your life, from tasks and projects to notes and resources, which are like tags in Tiago Forte's Para system, but keeps things pretty minimalistic. So if you wanted to integrate a habit tracker into a view like this, and note you could do this for any Notion template, whether it's one that I built or one that somebody else built or your own, all you would need to do is create a brand new section for it. So I'm going to go to this little plus icon here underneath this task manager view, and I'm going to create myself a brand new block. Currently it's in this column, so I'm going to drag it down and make it full width. And then I'm going to create a 2C 2-column row. So basically I want another row of 2 columns, one for my habit journal and one for my stat area. And to create that, first I'm going to give myself some labels. So we'll do heading 1 for habits and another heading 1 for stats. I'm going to go ahead and drag these columns over so they match with the current ones. And then beneath each one, I'm going to create what's called a linked database. This is basically a view into a database that already exists. So I'll do slash, and I think I want gallery for both. So I'm going to do gallery view, find my habits with robust stats database, and then I will copy the existing gallery view. And just like that, I have a gallery view of my habit tracker in here. But as you can see, this is pretty long. And if I'm running my life from a little dashboard like this, I probably only want to see the gallery pages that are relevant to me today. So to finish up this part, I'm going to go into my filters, and then I'm going to add to the existing rule that is already there, which I will explain in a couple of minutes, one more little rule here, which is going to be where date is on or after, and I think I'm going to go with yesterday instead of today. So this will basically show you today's journal card as well as yesterday's, and that's just useful in case you forgot to check off a habit yesterday. You can easily check it off from here. If you didn't want that, just set the filter to today. And finally, to bring in our stats, we can also bring in a little gallery block. We'll find our stats database. And I'm also going to bring in that gallery view. So just like that, you now have a full habit tracker and habit stats area alongside your projects, alongside your task manager, and alongside your notes and your resources, giving you a single page to basically manage your entire life. If you are curious about Ultimate Brain, which comes with this light dashboard along with a bunch of other advanced features, you can go over to thomasjfrank.com/brain. There's also a discount code in the description down below. I'll talk a little bit more about some of those more advanced features at the end of the video, but for now, let's go over to our level 5 and actually start building this stat tracker. So as I mentioned before, this is going to involve kind of a longer formula. I think you're going to come out of the rest of this video as pretty much a Notion formula expert. But before we can even make this formula, we have to do something else. So we're going to go right on back to level 4, and we're actually going to build on top of level 4 to create this stat tracker and get ourselves to level 5, which will be not just habits with daily stats, but habits with streaks. So to start this process off, I'm going to enter down, do a little 2C action to create 2 columns. I'm going to bring our table view into this column here, and I think I'll actually label these as well. So let's do /H1 for habits, drag that block down into this column, and then over here we'll do /H1 for stats. So to start this off, I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new database. So let's just call this database called stats. And in fact, I'll call it stats 2 just so I don't get confused with the other existing stats database. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all but one page in here. So this page is also going to be called stats itself. And this is what I call an aggregator row inside of Notion. So to get streak tracking inside of Notion, or any kind of like data tracking that is basically running calculations on multiple pages at once, we need to relate all those pages to a common stats page or an aggregator page. So that is what this stats page is going to be doing. And it does not need a tags property, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that as well. But it does need a relation property. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the stats page here. For whatever reason, I hid that tags property instead of deleting it, so I'll delete it right there. And I'm going to create myself a relation property. Now I have a whole Notion database beginners tutorial with a whole section on how relations work. If you want to understand deeply, I will link to that in the description below. But basically, we are just linking 2 databases together, and that's going to allow us to relate specific rows or pages in those databases to this page, almost like a task and project relation or a parent and subtask relation. So I'm going to add this relation, but I'm also going to show it on habits 1 here. Let's call this stats. And now I've got this relation property here in stats, but I also have the relation property on every row in the habits database. So the next thing I want to do is relate these rows to the stats database, just like that. I'll do the same thing for yesterday. And then the next thing I want to make sure to do is ensure that every single new page that gets created in the habits database is also related to this stats page. They all have to be related to the stats page in order for this to work. So to do that, we're going to do 2 different things. First, we're going to come into our today template that we created earlier. We're going to edit it, and we are going to set the stats relation to stats. That way, all of our automatically created pages are going to automatically have that relation already. And then we're also going to come into our filter criteria, which is right here. We're going to create an advanced filter just because that's my preference. And we're going to say where stats contains stats. I'll save that for everyone. That way, as you can see, if I manually create any pages in this database, they are also going to have this relation. So now we've basically ensured that no matter how a page is created, it's going to have this stats relation, and we're going to see every single one of our habit records in this relation here. And that is what's going to enable us to do our calculations. And that's actually the only additional property we need beyond our streak tracking formula property. So we are now ready to basically start coding. And to get ourselves prepped, I'm actually going to go ahead and move everything down below the stats area and get rid of this second column just for now. That way we have a bit more space to work. I'm also going to hide this property here, and we're going to create ourselves a formula property called water. So essentially, we're going to create a streak tracking property for each one of our habits, but luckily we'll be able to copy and paste almost all of the code from our first formula property into all the other ones, and then just change the property reference for the habit we're trying to check. So again, when we're using Notion for habit tracking, there is a bit of manual work to set up each of our habits, but once it is set up, it's pretty easy to use from then on. So now we can go into our formula editor and actually start building our streak tracking formula. Now, this used to be way harder to do with Notion Formulas 1.0. In fact, it might not have been possible, or if it was, you had to use some crazy regular expressions. Now, the formula, which I can kind of just preview for you if I drag this over here onto the screen, is a little bit long, but if we start breaking it down, it's actually not that complex. And the worst part of it is right here, just conceptually. So we're going to start there. And again, we're going to start from the ground up. And by the end of this, you're basically going to be a Notion formula expert. So before we start coding, let's think about what we actually need to do here. We want to get both the current and the longest streak for each habit, which means we need to start out by getting a list of the checked and unchecked habit values for each of those habits, and we must make sure it's in date order. So to do that, let's first bring in our habits relation. So this is the relation property we created, and you can see that we have all of those records from our habits table listed here. In fact, if I come over here and I add another one, let's just say for tomorrow for some reason, and I check those off, we're also going to get the tomorrow record as well. You can see it right there. So basically this is pulling in all of those related rows, and then we can actually sort it. And there's a brand new feature in the sort function that actually came out fairly recently where you can actually sort by a property value from the relation, which is super nice. So if I use current, I can then do dot, and I can access all of the properties inside our related database. So in my case, I want to go with date just like that. I'm also going to go ahead and make sure to add a date to my tomorrow record, make sure it's the 6th. And now you can see yesterday, today, and tomorrow, we have a date sorted list of pages. But because we're streak tracking, we need to start from the latest date, not the earliest one. So by taking this sorted value and then passing it through the reverse function, we now get a reverse date order. And that is basically where we can start things off. Now, to explain this really quickly, basically the sort function is operating on the entire array of pages from this habits relation. So current is a keyword that represents the current page that is being operated on. Basically, sort is going through each and every one, and current represents the one that we're operating on right now, which eventually is going to represent all of them. So basically, we're just getting the date from all of them and sorting by that date. So we have now reverse. Now what we want to do is actually go in and get that Boolean value from each of these pages. So for that, we can use a function called map. And this like sort is going to go through every single list item in this habits page array and do something, but instead of sorting it, it's going to do whatever we want it to do. We can basically define our own function inside of map, once again using current. So inside of current, we're going to grab our drink protein shake checkbox value, and now you can see we actually have our Boolean values just like that. And inside of map, we can actually turn these into numbers. So let's go to number just like that. And now we have 0, 1, 1. So again, map is operating on the entire list of values that has been spit out of this reverse function, and it's doing something to every single one of them. In this case, it's accessing the drink protein shake Boolean value and then converting it into a number, and then it's spitting out a brand new array with those modified values. So at this point, we have those numbers. Now, how do we get those streak values? Well, to make this a bit easier to understand going forward, I want to bring some additional records into this table because currently we only have 3, and it's gonna make it kind of hard to understand what's going on if we only have 3. So I have a few of my records from my other table down here. I'm gonna go ahead and select these, bring them into our habits table just like that. We'll go ahead and check off a few of these values specifically for the drink protein shake habit there. So you can see we have a streak of 4, 5, 6 even down there. In fact, these ones are blank, so I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of those. And then up here, we have a streak of 4. So ideally, what we should see is a streak of 4 as our current streak, because this is a tomorrow page. In fact, we can probably just get rid of it at this point. And then we should see a streak of actually 5 down here. And if we come back up to our stats area, we can see we have a group of 4 ones, then a 0, and then a group of 5 ones, representing our longest streak. But at the moment, this is just an array of numbers, and we can't really use it to determine what our streaks are. So we need to do something else to it. First, we are going to turn this into a string by using the join function. And if we look at join, we can see that it's going to basically take all the values of a list or an array and then return them as a string value with a joiner placed between each of the values. So in this case, if you had an array of A, B, and C, and you passed your comma and space as a joiner, you would get A, comma, space, B, comma, space, C. So we're gonna do that, but we are going to pass just a blank string as the joiner. So now we get a bunch of 1s and 0s. And what we can then do is pass that into the split function, which basically does the opposite. It splits a string based on a separator, and we can use 0 as the separator. So now we have our streaks. And because we know that everything here was already date sorted, we know that the first one is our earliest streak. And then if we had a whole bunch of them, we would know that the one that has the most 1s in it would be our biggest streak. In fact, we can make this even more obvious by then mapping through this one more time, taking current and getting the length value of it. Now we have 4 and 5. So at this point, we know what our current streak is, and we also know what our largest streak is. In fact, if I come over here and I make this even more obvious by taking that out of there and creating 2 streaks of 2 and then a streak of 4, we'll see 4, 2, 2. We still know what the current one is, and we still know what the largest one is. They just happen to be the exact same streak. So from here, we can actually start building our streak counter. But one small change we might want to make before we start actually building that out is we might want to remove today from the streak counting calculation, since it might be the middle of the day and maybe you just haven't done these habits yet, but you're still going to do them. So to do that, we can actually remove the first element from our array here, which we know is today's habit tracking journal, by adding another function after our reverse call. And that function is going to be slice. And if we look at slice here, we can see that it is basically going to return the items of a list from the provided start index to the end index if we provide it. And because arrays use what's called zero-based indexing, which means that the first element is at position 0, if we do slice 1, that is going to basically slice today's record off and return everything else. So now we have a streak of 2 instead of a streak of 4. And if I uncheck today's protein shake habit, we actually don't break the streak because we're not counting today. We're only counting from yesterday onward into the past. So now we can actually start figuring out what our streaks are. And to do that, I'm going to copy all of this. I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to start creating some variables. So we'll use the lets function, which basically allows us to create really handy variables inside of Notion formulas. If we come down here, we can see it in the functions area. Essentially, it lets us name a variable and then give it a value. and then name another variable, give it a value, do that as many times as we want, and then the final argument of the entire function is going to be what the function is actually returning, and we can use those named variables in that final argument, which is really, really nice. So to do that, I'm going to start this off by creating a name called streak. That's going to be our first variable, and the value of that variable is going to be everything that we just wrote. There is our streak. And what that allows us to do is get both our current streak and our biggest streak. So I'm going to come down here, create another variable called current streak, and watch what happens if I just give current streak the value of streak and then output current streak. We get 322 just like before. But what if I change the value of current streak from currently just being streak itself to streak.first? Now it's 3, and that is in fact our current streak. And we can use the exact same concept for the longest streak as well. So instead of just outputting the current streak, we can also define ourselves another variable. We'll call it longest streak. And in this case, instead of taking the first element of the streak array, we're going to go with the max element of the streak array, which is going to return the largest number of the arguments. So now if we output longest streak as our final argument there, we get 3. And if we come down here and make this streak bigger again, make it 5, it should be 5. There's our longest streak. And at this point, the logic is done, and all we have to do now is style it and make it look pretty. So to bring my existing copy back in, just as a reference here, I'm going to give you a preview of what we'll do. First, we're going to use some if-then logic to figure out both the color of the little chips here that we want to have, as well as whether or not this is going to say days or day based on the plurality of our streak. Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 0? Is it more than 2? That kind of thing. So again, it looks kind of confusing, kind of intimidating maybe, but once we actually get into the logic, you're going to see that it's actually pretty simple, and it just maybe looks a little bit like gobbledygook right now. So to start this off, again, because I want to build these up from the ground up and sort of show you the logic before we just start writing things linearly, I am going to actually output something. So I'm just going to call this current streak, and then I'm going to append our current streak value. Just like that, you can see 3, but watch what happens when I pass it into this style function. You can see down here, I can pass all these different little arguments to basically make it look any way I want. And the ones I want to use are C for code styling, which gives it this little border, this little button style here. I want to use B for bold, because I think it looks better. And then I want to use green for the color and green underscore background for the background color. So I basically want it to look like this, but only if my streak is 2 days or longer. If it's only 1 day, I want to make it blue. And if it's 0 days, if I've broken my streak, I would like to make it red. So that is why I need to use some conditional logic here. So to start building our conditional logic, I'm going to create yet another variable. I'm going to call this CS format for current streak format. And the value of CS format is going to be whatever comes out of an ifs statement. So you've probably heard of an if statement before, if this, then that. And an if statement has basically a true false condition. And then it is going to have what it does if the condition is true, and then what it does if the condition is false. Ifs is a little bit more flexible. It says returns the value that corresponds to the first true condition. And it's an alternative to basically nesting if statements. So in our case, this is going to be very useful because we have 3 things we're checking for. Is our current streak less than 1? No. Well, is it exactly 1? No. Well, then it must be more than 1. We've got 3 checks, not just 2. So here we're going to start by saying if current streak is less than 1, then we'll do something. Else if current streak is equal to 1, we'll do something. Otherwise, if current streak is greater than 1, we'll do something. Now, what exactly is something? Bringing back my reference in here, just to make things a bit more clear, each of these is going to return an array of 2 different values, red and days, blue and day, green and days. Essentially, I'm defining both the color of my little chip here, as well as the plurality of days in one nice little block here. So that is why I'm using an array here, and we can just basically type out our array just like you saw it there. Now you can see we have an error here, and that is because on my ifs statement, I forgot to add a comma at the end. So now that I have that, we have no more error here. And now we can actually use the value of CS format to affect what is being outputted here. So instead of just doing hard-coded values here, we know we want code, we know we want bolding, but this should be a variable and this should also be a variable. It shouldn't always just be green. So instead of green, we're just going to do CS format dot at, and at actually lets us specify an index of a list. Remember that the value of CS format is always going to be an entire list, which means it has multiple values inside of it. So to get our color value, we want to do at 0, remember 0-based indexing, and that is going to make it green in this case. And then for green background, we can do string concatenation to basically get the exact same thing. So we'll do underscore background, and then we'll do CS format dot at 0 plus background. So it looks the exact same now, but watch what happens if I come down here and I break my streak. Now it's 1, now it's 0, and our color is as we want it. So at this point, we can go and add our day or days value onto the number itself, and we can basically do that by wrapping current streak in parentheses and then adding CS format at 1. And you can see we are lacking a space between 0 and days here. So let's go ahead and add spaces for all of these options. And that is basically how you do streak tracking inside of a Notion habit tracker. So to finish this out, we are going to add our longest streak as well. And we can probably do some copying and pasting for that. And then we will clean things up so it looks basically exactly like this, where we have a label for the habit, and then we have things looking just like this. So it looks like we actually have current inside of our formatting here. We can go ahead and do that in our build as well. And all we need to do that is just move the position of our parenthesis to include current streak. There we go. And to save ourselves some horizontal room, I think I'm just going to delete streak and have it say current. And then all we need to do is add our longest streak as well. So just as we had CS format before, we're going to have LS format. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, enter down, create ourselves an LS format, and then we're going to change all of these to longest streak. So now you can see this basically matches the CS format as well. And all we have to do is just come down here and pretty much copy this exact thing and modify it for our longest streak. So we'll go ahead and change all of these current to longest, change all these CS format to LS format. And then I think I want to add a space character just to separate those two little chips. Finally, we can go in here and add a nice little emoji for water. And actually, is water what we're tracking here? No, it's protein shake. So we'll do a drink instead. Call it protein. And there is our streak track. So we've got protein. We can go ahead and change this over to a gallery style database if we want to. Turn this from page content to none. Go back to our properties, show our water property, which I just now realized should be called protein instead of water. And now to finish this off, all we need to do is essentially duplicate this and change the formula just a little bit to represent each of our habits. So if we go into our stats page, we can duplicate this property as many times as we want. I'm just going to do it once for you here. We'll call this one water, give it a nice little water icon. And then to modify our formula, all we would need to do is come here and change this drink protein shake reference to drink water. And then come down here and change our little label from protein to water, so we know what we're looking at. And if you wanted to add any more habits, if you wanted to remove habits, you would basically just come in here and adjust this. So again, if you want streak tracking inside of Notion, if you want to do that kind of more involved habit tracking, you do have to do a little bit of formula magic like this each time. If you don't want to do that, there are lots of great habit trackers out there like Habitica, Habitify. There are a ton of them inside of the free habits at 5 levels of complexity template, which I have linked to in the description down below, as well as a little bit of information on how to actually chart your habits inside of Notion. I'm not going over that in this video because it does have some downsides and it requires a little bit too much manual refreshing for my taste, but I did include it in that template page at the very least. Okay, so to finish this off for realsies, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create my 2 columns one more time. We will go ahead and add our stats column over here, if I can find the actual column. And then we're going to add our habits over to the left side, just like we had them before. Get rid of this blank line right here. We're going to change over to our gallery view. And that, my friends, is level 5. You've got your habits here. They're going to be automatically created each and every day. Looks like we actually still need our sort criteria. So I'll go ahead and add date descending like we had before. And then you're going to have your streak tracking for each and every one of your habits. Of course, you do also need to make sure to show them in this view too. And eventually, once you're finished building it, it's going to look something like this. Or if you want it inside of a template like Ultimate Brain, it'll be inside of your Ultimate Brain dashboard, wherever you choose to embed it. Once again, if you do want to manage your entire personal productivity inside of Notion, from task management to note-taking to bookmarks to goal tracking, and now even habit tracking, you can check out Ultimate Brain over at thomasjfrank.com/brain. It is truly a done-for-you productivity system inside of Notion. With this channel, I strive to give you as much information as possible so you can build any system you want from scratch. But if you do want it done for you, you also want support and tutorials and lots of cool stuff coming in the future, you can get your copy of Ultimate Brain, and there's even a discount code in the description you can use as well. Thanks as always for watching. There is also a free habit tracking template in the description that has every level we went through in this video that you can basically just swipe and play with and experiment with. So check that out as well. These videos right here on screen will teach you even more about Notion if you are curious, and I'll see you in the next one.